Continuing our Houston Rockets 2022 exit interview series. In today's show, we'll tackle General Manager Rafael Stone, his final media availability for the 2021-2022 NBA season, key takeaways from what he had to say in his final media appearance, as well as a big question heading into this offseason for Rafael Stone, coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
With the second pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Jalen Green.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep getting better every day. I'm going to keep perfecting my craft. And every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian, also host of Locked On NBA Mondays, co-host of State of the Rockets, as well as founder of ClutchCityControlRoom.com. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. In today's episode, we will dive into General Manager Rafael Stone's final media availability for the 2021-2022 NBA season, his exit interview, if you will. We'll dive into that. We'll tackle key takeaways from what he had to say with the media, as well as a big question heading into this offseason regarding General Manager Rafael Stone. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in.
Adjust it. Just been just done.
Rafael, what do you look at some of your priorities for this offseason?
I think our number one priority is just our current players getting better. We feel really good about the group we have currently in place, and we think that they got better universally over the course of the year. And we need and expect that to really continue through the summer. And if that happens, I think we will have had a good summer.
How much does the current flexibility you have impact the decisions you guys want to make this offseason in terms of building the roster?
I guess I don't understand what you mean by flexibility.
Like just the draft picks you have, the future assets you have.
Oh yeah, I mean we are going to be opportunistic this summer, this season, this coming season, next summer, so on and so forth. We do think we're well positioned for the future, and if there becomes a deal, if a deal becomes available that we think will make us better, we do have a lot of assets, a lot of future assets and current ones, and we would be in the hunt for the deal. It takes two to tango, so it does require that the other team like the package you put together, but we do think we can put together a lot of packages that should be pretty attractive.
For this year, development was obviously the top priority. Do you view next year as the first goal becomes one-loss record?
Probably not. I think that we actually have talked about that a lot this week, and I think it is hard if you are a great team, if your roster is in a championship level place. It makes a ton of sense to be like, we need to win at least 55 games and really want to win 60, because that's a great barometer for your ability to win a championship. If you're not quite that team, and I don't think we're that team next year, then I think it's much more about the process, about the improvement of the players, about how you play each and every game. And then the record kind of plays itself out. But I think you can make a mistake sometimes focusing on wins and losses, in part because if you lose a game, it can be the end of the world. And that should, for a young team, and we're definitely going to be a young team next year, it should not be the end of the world if you happen to lose a game.
So with 13 or 14 guys under contract right now, depending, non-guaranteed, guaranteed, and then 2 draft picks, if there's not major additions of veterans, do you expect next year to be kind of like this year, about growth, young guys get better, and accept?
No, I don't think it'll be a complete rerun. No, I do think it's still about growth. It's about getting better. I mean, until you're a championship team, it should always be about getting better, right? And so I do think it's about getting better and about growing. But I also think it's about We know this group. We've had almost a full season with most of these guys. Jae'Sean, we've not had a full season with, and Usman, we have not. And I might be missing somebody else, but I don't think so. But with the rest of the guys, we've now had a full season. We have a good appreciation for who they are as players. If you look at the roster we brought to camp last year, we really had no idea where the guys were going to fit. And so that's, I think, the key difference is that because these guys, because we know who they are, we have real expectations about their improvement and where they're going to perform and everything else. With the group we had last year, it was more let's give them an opportunity, and we had to let people play through all their mistakes. And it's not to say that people aren't going to have an opportunity to play through some mistakes next year, but I do think it will be more limited. And we just finished our exit meetings, and that was one of the things we communicated was, our expectations are going to grow. You guys grew. Our expectations are going to grow too. We shouldn't be making the same mistake more than once. And so I do think it's different.
How do you feel, Stephen, navigated through the season again?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, this has been a difficult year, but I think Stephen did well. And in the macro, I do think all of our players improved. And so, that was our primary goal. And in that sense, I think he and his staff did a very good job.
I imagine you yourself on this year's draft class.
I wouldn't. You don't know what a draft class is going to be for 5 or 6 years. You don't draft anyone to be a rookie, And so I think I don't want to pat myself on the back. I don't want to criticize myself or us organizationally. We're really excited about the guys. I thought they had a lot of talent when we drafted them. I still think they have a lot of talent, but it is incumbent upon them to continue to really, really work to develop it, and us to insist on that work ethic and provide the resources so they can get better and better and better.
Along those same lines, what is it like for you, who had a belief in these guys that you drafted, to see them kind of come into their own in this league a little bit throughout the season? What's that like for you?
It's not about me. I'm happy for them. It's a very. I mean, I've been in the league a long time. So, and I've been through enough highs, and I'm old. So, for me, I'm happy for them that, I've come to, you draft someone, you get to know them. We were lucky in that we drafted really, really a good group of people. I mean, they're obviously talented, but individually, these are good individuals. So mostly I'm just happy for them that they're enjoying success, and I'm proud of them in the sense that the things that we organizationally, and Stephen in particular, told them they need to work on, they worked on, and they saw the benefits of that. So that's a good, healthy thing for us and for them individually.
Going off that, I know you feel pretty good about this last draft class. So for you, how excited are you knowing that you can add a premium talent, at worst a top 5 pick this upcoming draft?
I mean, we may not, I said the same thing last year. We may not draft a single person. We just got to see. We don't know where either of our picks are. We don't know who's going to be in the draft even yet. So it's just too early. I do think we'll be a more talented team next year than we were this year, and I actually think just in terms of talent, we're a pretty talented team. We're just extraordinarily young. Chances are we'll be even younger next year, but you never know.
Coming up, the second half of General Manager Rafael Stone's media availability. But first, a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline, because BetOnline.net is your #1 source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season. And look, I've been giving you a lot of playoff type props when it comes to BetOnline, but here's one that actually matters for Rockets fans. Who will be the first overall pick in this year's 2022 NBA draft? Right now, Jabari Smith Jr. is plus 110 to be the #1 overall pick. Just behind him is Chet Holmgren at plus 170, and then bringing it up in third place is Paolo Banchero at plus 225. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, the draft, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And continuing on here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's go ahead and wrap up the second half of General Manager Rafael Stone's media availability.
In terms of, you have the full mid-level exception, but you don't have probably any of your own veterans to spend it on to keep. Do you envision using it or saving all that cap room for the next summer when you have the massive cap room?
I think that's going to depend entirely upon what's available at mid-level. We firmly were trying to spend mid-level this year, and we used a little bit of it, but we just didn't find, not for lack of trying, and we had talks with some people here domestically, some talks with people internationally, and it just didn't happen. And we found people we were really excited about, and we ended up finding other ways of bringing them in. So the real answer is TBD. Like it's just too early to say what the market's going to be like.
Have you all put together a plan on what you're going to do with John yet? With John Wall?
Yeah, we met with John. We're like absolutely nothing's changed. So we're like, I love John. I say that every time because I do. He owes me a drink, but other than that, no. I mean, nothing's changed with John. Like we're going to work together like we always had, and and I'm very appreciative of him.
Rafael, who would you label, if you would, one or two maybe of your surprises for this year from the current players? Like was it Alpi, Josh Christian, or both?
No, I mean we brought these guys in because we were excited about them and we thought that they could do what they did. So, I don't think we. No, I mean I'm really happy with the people we brought in universally. That I will say, but it would be unfair to them to say I'm surprised because we obviously saw something. That's why we brought them in.
Well, I don't mean surprised like you're shocked, but the guys that maybe did things you didn't expect them to do. You knew they were good, that they get better than you thought, that kind of thing. Or does that not work for you?
Nah, I have high expectations. So, no, I will say on the non-basketball front, Alperen's ability to adjust, not knowing any English, I was super happy with, and he hit the ground running. I was surprised by that. Like he literally didn't speak a word of English, and he communicated perfectly. That's definitely a talent. But no, on the court, I think those guys are who we hope they be.
Other than Coach
to John Wall, are you at all confident that y'all have a resolution to a situation before next season begins?
I don't know how to answer that. So I think my confidence, there's no resolution needed. So the situation's good, like we're fine. So I think what I would say on John is we have a very good relationship. We're working towards a common goal. That has been what we've been doing this whole time, and we'll continue doing that.
Other than Coach Turner, it's materialized before training camp. Would you then entertain buyouts with him, or would you go a whole other year of him watching basketball?
I think there's a real market for John. I think we'll find a deal that will work for him and for us. And if one doesn't materialize, we'll cross that bridge if and when it occurs. But that is not something he's focused on. It's not something I'm focused on at this time.
Other than Coach Turner, is the expectation for Steven and the rest of his staff to all be back next year?
Definitely the expectation is for Steven to be back, and as to staffing and everything else, that is Steven's choice. So, but yeah, like I definitely think that Steven Silas, who's about to follow me, is one of my favorite people in the world. He's an extraordinarily good man, extraordinarily smart man, and and I'm looking forward to attacking this challenge with him yet again.
Mr. Stone, it seems like you guys have a foundation in place with Jalen, Alperen, and KP. Whether it's the draft, free agency, or whatever the case might be, how do you guys separate adding players to this roster, rather than be, trying to separate from what you need versus best player might be available?
I think generally it's really hard to make the NBA, and there are plenty of people who are drafted in the number 1, number 2, number 3. You pick a number, there's plenty of people who don't make it. And so I think our job is to try and find people who can be successful in the NBA, and that's much more about their talent level than it is fit. And so, I think that it's very rare, if ever, that you should worry about fit when you're drafting a guy, because he might fit perfectly and then not be good enough to play. And so that happens all the time. And so, yeah, we just worry about trying to find the best player who we think can ultimately have a really long and successful NBA career. And then, I've said this before too, I think really good basketball players can play with other really good basketball players. Yeah, that's my view.
What does it mean to have so much fan support, despite there being kind of a down season, developmental year, but just to see the outpouring of support from start to finish from the fans this season?
Okay, I'm glad I waited on that question. I love our fans. They are diehard, and they are great, and I'm deeply appreciative of them. One thing that's really cool, our situation is different from a lot of situations. We have been we've been really, really good for a long period of time. And one nice thing, it's pure, I didn't know this was going to be the case. I hoped it would be, but I think has happened with our fan base is that people get it. They understand what we're trying to do, and they're bought in. And when I get the opportunity to interact with our fans and they tell me that makes me feel great. Hopefully I've helped that process a little bit by explaining it and not trying to, I'm not very good at hiding things, so I haven't really tried very hard. Like, we're rebuilding and we're going to be young and we're going to be exciting, and winning even a single game is going to be hard for this past year, and it's going to be hard for next year. Like, winning in the NBA is hard. It's hard for every team. You can look at Super Team X that didn't have a good year. This happens all the time. Winning is very hard. But I do think we put together a very young, very exciting, very talented group, and if that group continues to develop, and if I do my job right and Steven does his job right, it should be a really, really fun ride up. And I do think it's more fun as a fan, this is speaking from personal experience, to be there at the beginning than the end. And so I just greatly appreciate all the fans who've decided to, like, really buy into it and ride the journey with us. It's been, in that sense, it's been super rewarding for me. You know, when I have that random interaction, it's been really cool.
What was Super Team X that didn't have a very good year that you had in mind?
I did not have one in mind. Thank you guys.
That's going to do it for Rafael Stone. Coming up, key takeaways from what Rafael Stone had to say to the media, as well as a big question for General Manager Rafael Stone heading into this Rockets offseason. But first, a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar, because when it comes to protein bars, you've got to check out Built Bar. They are the #1 protein bar on the market. So many incredible flavors to choose from: raspberry, strawberry, mint brownie, salted caramel, cookies and cream, coconut brownie chunk. You can't go wrong with really any of the bars. I mean, they're all incredible. Every single bar coated in 100% delicious chocolate. They're always they're not gritty or chalky like other protein bars. They're soft. The consistency is always actually pretty pleasing for a protein bar, right? Every single bar, low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. Amazing if you're on a keto diet. Amazing if you're trying to cut back a little bit, maybe lose a little bit of weight. You can check them out. Just go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. And another message from our friends over at rockauto.com. Look, with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's basically impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you would happen to need for your car or truck. Save time and money when using rockauto.com. Why choose to spend up to 30, 50, or even 100% more for the exact same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? Best of all, RockAuto.com is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years. The prices are always reliably low for every single customer. They don't price gouge you just because you're a DIY person who knows how to do your own, like, self-installation, self-repairs, that kind of thing, which is exactly how it should be. You shouldn't get charged more for that. They have everything that you could possibly need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even brand new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And this is a really important part. Be sure to write "Locked On" in their "How did you hear about us" box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck will ever need. Be sure to visit rockauto.com. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's go ahead and dive into takeaways from GM Rafael Stone's exit interview as we continue our Locked On Rockets exit interview series this week. And one thing that stands out pretty early on from Stone's availability here is the question talking about kind of the linear progression of this rebuild, right? You know, a lot of emphasis was placed on the macro lens and view of what took place this Rockets season and how objectively, when you take like a 10,000-foot view on how the season went, I think you have to come away pretty pleased, right? Every single player got better, right? You can maybe get into the nitty-gritty of they didn't do this lineup, they didn't make this change, they didn't run this guy for enough time. Every single player under Stephen Silas's tenure for 2 years in a row now has gotten better. Now, there will be some, detractors who will say that players would have gotten better regardless of, they just got better in spite of Stephen Silas, right? And I think that, frankly, fans don't give Stephen Silas enough due credit for the work that does get put in behind the scenes that we are not privy to, the things that we do not see, the amount of film work that goes in, the amount of practice time that goes in, the amount of repetitions, just all the work that is poured in behind the scenes outside of the 48 minutes that we are privy to watching an actual NBA basketball game take place 82 games of the season. So with that, I do think you have to look at this season as an absolute success in that every single player got better on this Rockets roster, or at least all the young guys got better. I don't know if EG is exactly like continuing his development, you know, as a grizzled veteran in the NBA, but anyways, I digress. Found it interesting that Rafael Stone, while highlighting the developmental structure of this season, pointed to the fact that next season doesn't necessarily have to be about wins and losses, and that I've been kind of proclaiming for a while now that next season should probably be the season where we see at least a trend upward, right? Now, not necessarily like I'm cautiously optimistic that the Rockets have enough talent on the roster to at least make a push towards the plan. And when I say a push towards the plan, I don't mean they're going to be like in the plan mix, like 7 through 10. I mean a push towards the plan, right? Like they could be vying for that 10th spot. Or, you know, maybe they're in a nitty-gritty fight for the 10th or 11th seed, you know, next season, possibly, right? Depending on how some of this talent coalesces. That said, Stone was very upfront about the fact that it shouldn't be about wins and losses, that it should just be about the continued growth and development of the players, which I think is probably about the right mindset you want to have if you're a rebuilding franchise. And so I think that if you're a Rockets fan, you know, you've got to be really content and happy with all the messaging and the way that the, you know, from top down within the organization, from ownership with Tillman Fertitta, with Patrick Fertitta, with Rafael Stone, that everybody appears to be in kind of lockstep with one another about this rebuild and about the fact that it's going to take time to do it right. And that they're not just sitting here thinking, oh, well, we're going to immediately leverage ourselves into the next like available star. We're going to trade for the next guy who's like unhappy and wants out, right? Like the Rockets could have maybe been in the mix for like CJ McCollum this season, possibly, right? Like if they really wanted to, right? They have the draft capital. They had the contracts to line up. Like they could have done that, right? The Rockets could have been a middling, you know, play-in bound team with John Wall and Christian Wood and Karis LeVert and, you know, Jarrett Allen, and they could have had that whole core and been fighting for, you know, a 7th or 8th seed at best, maybe in the Western Conference, and not have this incredibly bright future with a future superstar in Jalen Green, with gems in Alperen Şengün and Josh Christopher, and, you know, all of this, right? The future is incredibly bright because they hit the reset button at the exact right time. So credit to General Manager Rafael Stone for doing that, and for the messaging to continue to be very clear that they're not like angling to be, you know, winning next season necessarily. And I think that that's probably the right mentality to have rolling into next season. I will also say that everything that General Manager Rafael Stone said was very lawyery. He's a lawyer. Like everything that he said, like he did this last season when he talked about the fact that the Rockets might not even, you know, quote unquote, might not make their pick, you know, that they might not even use the pick. They're going to use the top pick this year. Like if the Rockets don't use the top pick this year, I'm not going to like promise to do something like, you know, horrendous. I don't know. I'll get like a Rockets R buzzed into the side of my head or something if they don't make a top pick selection this year. Like Isaiah Hartenstein had, right? When he like, you know, buzzed the R into the side of his head and then got waived by the Rockets like 4 days later or whatever it was. No, so seriously, they're going to probably make the top pick, but Stone kind of tiptoeing around that and saying, well, we might not even make the picks, right? We don't know where the picks are, this, that, and the other thing. It's lawyer speak, right? It's GM speak for just, we're keeping our options open. I'm not going to paint myself into a corner and start talking about the pick like it's a de facto thing, because if something does materialize, if there's something on the table, then sure, we're going to explore all the avenues. We're going to look at all this. It's it's kind of a non-answer, right? It's saying a lot without saying anything. That said, I do think that there are, you know, one other thing to take away from what Stone did say is that Silas is going to be back, right? And he continues to be, you know, to continue to sing Stephen Silas's praises at every chance that he gets. It remains very apparent that he and Silas, again, are very close. They talk all the time. They interact with one another all the time. They're very much on the same page. And for the head coach, that's got to feel good, right? If you're the head coach of the team that's been the worst team in the NBA in back-to-back seasons, and it's your first head coaching gig, to have that type of support from your general manager and to have that type of messaging continue to go out to the media of, hey, we understand we're rebuilding. We get that. We understand that there's going to be a lot of losing, but as long as our players are growing and developing and getting better, which they have, then we think that you're doing the right job. That's got to be gratifying for Stephen Silas to know that he's in the good graces of Rockets ownership, of upper management, all of that, to allow him to continue to do his job, right? To allow him to continue to try and grow these guys, cultivate them, hold them accountable. We'll talk about that, some of the specifics from what Silas had to say in his exit interview when we do his episode. But I want to keep things focused here on Rafael Stone, because my big question for Rafael Stone is, can Stone continue to hit on his talent evaluations in this year's draft? Because I think so far, you look at the track record for Rafael Stone as a talent evaluator, and he's absolutely knocked it out of the park so far, right? Jae'Sean Tate, KJ Martin, establishing Christian Wood, right? You can, whether you like Christian Wood or not, there's no denying the fact that there's absolutely talent there. Kevin Porter Jr., again, acquired by GM Rafael Stone, continues to acquire talented basketball players. And then you look at this past year's draft, right, where conceivably we can walk away feeling incredibly confident about 3 out of the 4 picks, and then the only one that you're sort of is not necessarily not confident in, but just kind of a question mark, is Usman Garuba. But he has enough professional play from overseas that you feel fairly confident in the fact that he's going to figure it out at the NBA level, right? So I think we can safely say that Rafael Stone went 4 for 4 in this past year's draft. And so from a talent evaluation perspective, Stone has done a phenomenal job, right? Picking and choosing the right guys. And it's still early, right? Because and Stone said it himself, right? You don't draft these guys to be rookies, right? You draft them to be professional NBA players, and you need 2, 3, 4, 5 years to see how they actually pan out as, NBA players once they start to actually grow into who they're going to be for the entirety for the rest of their careers. That said, every single one of these rookies, every single one of these young prospects has shown an immense amount of promise since, stepping into the organization. And if that track record continues, then regardless of my affiliations with the Jabari Jungle, regardless if you're on the Banchero bus, whether you're an Ivy Leaguer, whether you're one of the what is it, Chia Chet's Holmgren Hive, I don't know. I still don't remember what the official one is for Holmgren's fan club. But regardless of which draft pick you want the Rockets to make this year, right? You should feel incredibly confident about what Rafael Stone has done already in his tenure as the Rockets GM and the entirety of that front office, right? Top to bottom, Rafael Stone, all the scouts, everybody that they've got working in that front office. You should feel incredibly confident about what they're doing. And no matter the selection they make, whether it's with the 1st overall pick, whether it's with the 5th overall pick, whoever they take with that draft pick, because they're probably going to take the draft pick. Otherwise, I'm going to walk away with an R on the side of my head. Maybe I should put an L on the side of my head because I was wrong on that take. Anyways, I digress. Whoever they decide to pick, you should walk away feeling incredibly confident about, because it feels like Stone hasn't missed so far. And that would be a bit derailing for this rebuild if this pick is suddenly the first pick that he misses on or that doesn't pan out or whatever. But I think the talent at the top end of this draft, the top 4 specifically, maybe Shaedon Sharpe if you want to include him in that mix as well as a potential guy to break into the consensus top 4. I mean, there's a lot of talent at the top end of this draft. It's not exactly like last year's draft, but there's still some really incredible prospects to choose from. And so does the track record continue for Rafael Stone? That said, also, right, what does he do with the Brooklyn pick, right? Does he trade that one? Does he hold on to it? Does he draft another player with that selection? I feel confident in Stone's ability to make the right choices at both of those picks, at both of those spots. But that is kind of the big question that I have for him moving forward. And again, a lot of these questions don't necessarily have immediate answers, right? These are just kind of big picture questions for each of these individuals moving forward. So my big picture question for Stone, right, is can he continue to hit on these draft prospects, on these young talent, on these young players? Can he continue to be a good evaluator of young talent and continue to cultivate this exciting young core that the Rockets have. Also, shout out to Stone. I wanted to acknowledge this, right? Just the fact that he does, see and hear and appreciate the fan support, right? Rockets fans are a different breed, right? They're bought in top to bottom. They get it. They understand that this Rockets team is in the midst of a rebuild. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that the Astros just went through it a few years ago, right? Where the Astros were, they truly they bottomed out. They were rebuilding. They built something. They basically built a dynasty from the ground up, right? So maybe it has something to do with that a little bit. But to go from a team that has experienced as much winning as the Rockets have for a very long period of time, right? Like 20 or so years of, being very competitive, either middle of the pack or upper echelon of the Western Conference, with a few down seasons here and there, but largely, winning seasons for the past 2 decades, competing for titles, playoffs, all of that. To go from that into an immediate rebuild and bottom out and be the worst team in the NBA 2 years in a row and still have the level of fan support that the Rockets have, Stone appreciates that, right? And that's why he connects with the fans the way that he does. That's, he's not Daryl Morey, with the trigger-happy Twitter fingers interacting with fans and other media on Twitter. That's just not Stone's, personality, but he gets it and he appreciates it. And I think that Stone, in and of itself, he appears to be a bit more of a basketball fan at heart than Daryl Morey was, at least on the surface, right? You can see in the way that he talks about the game, the way that his eyes light up when he's talking about a prospect, or just, the way that he talks about basketball. It's really exciting to see. And to have him at the helm of this Rockets rebuild, I said it from the first day that he took office, and as he started navigating and as we started, seeing the moves that he was making, I feel incredibly confident in where this Rockets team is headed with him in charge. And it feels like he has the backing of ownership. It feels like he's got the backing of Tillman Fertitta, of Patrick Fertitta. They work, in conjunction with one another constantly, all these different things. So to see that taking place, I'm caught, again, I'm not it's not all, sunshines and rainbows, right? There's going to be speed bumps along the way. There's a lot this Rockets team still has to work towards to get better, but they've got a strong foundation right now for long-term future success. And that's exactly what you want out of, any sports organization, but especially out of your Houston Rockets. So with that, that's it for today's episode. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, brand new Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. Also, check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. How do you feel about General Manager Rafael Stone's closing comments on the season? How do you feel about how he's done as the general manager so far, right? Let me know in the comments. I do read each and every one of those every single day. But as always, thank you so much for watching, so much for listening, and we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.